Mike Owen, this is a real serious problem. This tobacco, these e-cigarettes, you got numerous examples of them exploding in people's face. This is combustible. That's the first thing, an objection that I got, and you got a history, and there's been proof of this taking place. They got one attorney, he only takes these type of cases because of these e-cigarettes blowing up in people's face. Some of them been exploding in people's pockets and people running down the street with their pants on fire because of these goddamn e-cigarettes. And by the same response, the tip of an e-cigarette contains more nicotine, cancer-causing materials in the tip of that chassis than a total pack of a cigarette. Is that clear? You're contaminating the public, and it's predominantly being used by youth and adults that think that they can kick the habit of smoking cigarettes is actually inhaling more tobacco and nicotine that they were inhaling by using regular cigarettes. You're dumping a cancer-causing activity into the community just like the Navy did when they dumped cancer-causing materials out at the shipyard that's annihilating people of color, majority of black people, and a lot of Samoan people. And now there's some white people that's living out there that's catching cancer too. There's no difference. The only difference is that you got a license to do it, but you're getting the same effect by having people exposed to cancer-causing materials. You're brainwashing the younger generation with this high-tech and device and claiming that it's not a cancer-causing material. I've seen doctors on TV explain that it's causing anxiety disorder, compulsive disorder, and causing a destruction of concentration of young people in school.
Thank you very much, Supervisor Mandelman. I'm Dennis Kelly. I'm a retired teacher, 35 years classroom experience in San Francisco. I was also the former head of the United Educators of San Francisco as president for 12 years. When I started teaching, we had smoking rooms for teachers on campuses. We had smoking rooms for children on campuses also. We called them the bathrooms. We have moved away from that entirely. Because of the recognition of what cigarettes do and what smoke does to children and to other adults, we no longer allow any kind of smoking on school grounds. It's time that we did the same thing on all government property. I am here in support of this resolution. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Next speaker.
My name is Naftali Offen, and I'm the president of the Coalition of Lavender Americans on Smoking or Health, CLASH. And the main thing I want to say is this is a dream gateway drug for the tobacco industry. They're thrilled to have it because it makes it so easy for young people to get addicted to nicotine. And I also want to remind you that Altria now owns a sizable share of Juul, so we should be calling it Juul Altria. They are drug pushers, and back in 2006, the Altria, Philip Morris, and the other big tobacco companies were adjudicated racketeers for lying to the public for decades about the harms of tobacco, and they're doing the same thing now. We wouldn't be here today if not for the lack of action on the part of the FDA. So like every other issue around tobacco control historically, it has to begin on the beginning, on grassroots, on local, municipal, and state areas in order to get what we need to protect the public. So San Francisco historically has been a leader in this movement and has done great work to save lives over the years. And you're in a position now to prevent another generation from becoming addicted to nicotine. Please pass both of these ordinances. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi, my name's Stan Glantz. I'm a professor of medicine at UCSF and director of the Center for Tobacco Control Research there. I'd just like to correct a statement made by one of the earlier speakers. There's about 60 or 70 studies looking at the effectiveness of e-cigarettes as smoking cessation devices, and the vast majority of them show that smokers who use e-cigarettes are actually less likely to quit smoking than smokers who don't use e-cigarettes. So this argument, which is widely promoted by the e-cigarette companies, that these are somehow a way to quit smoking, it's not only wrong, it's a scam, because they keep people smoking. So the argument that the city should continue selling these and manufacturing these products on city property as some sort of public health measure is just inconsistent with what the evidence shows. UCSF was the last major medical center in the state to stop selling cigarettes a long time ago. And I mean, I think it's just sensible that the city not engage in promoting this lethal product on its own property. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good afternoon. My name is Jeremiah Mock. I'm a professor at the University of California, San Francisco. With regard to this particular matter, I want to urge you to move forward with this ban because fundamentally the San Francisco would be in a conflicted position. It would have a conflict of interest because the city and county have public policy, and particularly in the form of public health policy, to try to discourage and prevent the use of nicotine products. And if you allow the city and county to earn revenue from those businesses, then essentially you have a conflict of interest position. So I appreciate your willingness to solve this problem. Thank you.
Go ahead, Doctor.
Okay, I'm still Stan Glantz from UCSF. When I read about this proposal, I thought it was one of the smartest local laws I've seen in a long time. When the FDA took jurisdiction over e-cigarettes in 2016, they gave the e-cigarette companies 2 years to submit the applications for what's called a pre-market order, which requires that the e-cigarette company demonstrate that allowing the marketing of the product would be, quote, appropriate for the public health. In that same rule, the FDA committed to getting the review done within a year, and during which time the product could continue to be marketed. So as Supervisor Wilson said, Juul could have submitted, and all the e-cigarette companies could have submitted their pre-market authorization applications three years ago, and if they'd have been able to make the case that these products were appropriate for the public health, they would have been approved by now, and they would be sold legally under this ordinance. The problem is that the Trump administration effectively suspended that rule by giving the companies until 2022 to even apply. And in fact, they've been sued over that in federal court in Maryland, and a judge has ordered that the FDA is ignoring the law. And the fact that the FDA isn't doing its job is why this ordinance is even being considered right now. I think it's a brilliant move. I think it will force the FDA to start acting, and it will say to Juul, if you really think you can make a case that can be defended scientifically that these products are appropriate for the public health, make it, and then they could be sold. This is a much more moderate proposal than what Beverly Hills just did when they simply outlawed the sale of all tobacco products. So I strongly urge a yes vote for this ordinance.
The testimony from the doctor there just gives me further ground to make my demonstration on my hands-on demonstrated experience. I'm triggered and quick to react that the fact that you do not have a license from the Drug Administration to sell a narcotic, you're in violation of civil law and criminal law. You need to make a recommendation to both the city attorney and the district attorney to file charges in both sets of courts pertaining to criminal law and civil law because you're selling a narcotic without a license. And I want to put strong emphasis on it. You're putting profit over safety, and you're selling material that you have to be licensed in order to sell. And you're not doing that. So that should be done as well. Along with the testimony from the doctor, you can't get more clear-cut preponderance of professional evidence and testimony from a professional to verify that this studies, 60 to 70 of the people that are tested are not going to quit smoking cigarettes. It's a false narrative, and it's actually fraud because you're making statements that's not true and correct. So both city attorneys, the criminal law attorneys, the district attorney's office, and the civil attorney's office, Dennis Herrera office, shall be notified of this fact and told that there's no license for them to be selling this product in the first damn place. So you sue them and countercharge with a multi-billion-dollar lawsuit. That'll take care of that. Then they'll clean up their act because they'll be facing not only civil suit, but criminal liabilities. You're selling an illegal drug to minors. You're poisoning minors. You're in violation of environmental and safety protection rules by putting.
Good afternoon. My name is Blythe Young, and I'm the Community Advocacy Director for the American Heart Association in the Greater Bay Area. This proposed policy would reduce access to the products that are tobacco industry's key strategy for targeting and addicting new nicotine users, particularly youth. The tobacco industry is actively and aggressively working to addict new young people, particularly those from communities of color, and their tools are e-cigarettes and vaping devices and products like Juul. They know that the formulated liquid within the Juul products and other vaping devices contain nicotine salts, which make the inhalation of nicotine seamlessly smooth and highly appealing to youth. Big Tobacco has invested in Juul to continue their cycle of people with a lifelong addiction to nicotine. Vaping and e-cigarettes are Big Tobacco in a new costume. Many people will tell you they've used e-cigarettes or vaping devices to quit smoking, that these products are cessation devices. Cessation devices are FDA-approved products. The rise in the use of e-cigarettes and vape products is a result of a bait and switch. People may quit smoking, but they continue to use equal or greater amounts of nicotine provided through unknown ingredients which were never meant to be inhaled. Ending the sale of non-FDA-approved e-cigarette and vaping products isn't taking away local choice. It's making sure e-cigarette products are regulated before sale. This is the same for any other product. Everything has a set of standards except for e-cigarettes. Passing this policy will help protect our community from nicotine addiction and is crucial to preventing tobacco-related death, disease, and nicotine poisoning. The American Heart Association respectfully asks for your support of this vital health policy. We ask that you put the health of your constituents above tobacco industry products, including Juul, and help ensure that San Francisco residents have the healthy and prosperous lives they deserve. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Hello, my name is LaTanya Smith, and I work for the American Heart Association. June has been a very sad month for me over the past few years. 6 years ago this month, I lost my father to COPD because of his years of smoking. 3 years ago this month, I lost my mother, also to COPD because of her years of smoking. This is just a different package for the same deadly chemical. I want to be here for my grandkids, and I also want them to be here for me. Please join me in support of this e-ban, of this e-cigarette ban. Thank you very much.
So I'm Jeremiah Mock. I'm a professor at University of California, San Francisco. I've been conducting tobacco research on behavior in smoking for about the last 22 years. We're faced with a public health crisis, the likes of which we have never seen. We have young people who are being exposed and using nicotine in a form that has never really been tested and at concentrations that young people really cannot absorb. We've conducted a study at 12 Bay Area high schools. These are the slides that I wanted to show you, looking at documenting the environmental impact of e-cigarette products. E-cigarette products contain toxic metals, lithium-ion batteries, plastics that San Franciscans have been very concerned about. And from what we understand from Juul, take a look at this. In 2017, Juul reported that they manufactured 20 million pods per month. Last year, a spokesman from Juul reported that they manufactured 40 million pods per month. That's equivalent to 500 million pods a year, and with sales rising. Those are all images of Juul pods that we've collected at high schools, including in San Francisco. And I have bags and bags and bags of pods that we've collected. And I want to point out that it's not just Juul pods. We find them in the same places where cigarettes are being smoked. We know that these products are a product that entices young people to ultimately switch over to smoking cigarettes. I want to encourage you to understand that young people need your protection, and San Francisco's environment needs your protection from the toxins that come from the use of these products.
Professor, if I might ask you to address an issue that's sort of weighing on my mind a little bit.
Yes.
One of the arguments against a complete ban is that it sort of flies in the face of harm reduction arguments, and that we want people to be doing less damage to themselves in whatever activities they're engaged in, and that e-cigarettes are doing less damage to someone's body than traditional cigarettes. And I was wondering if you could share your thoughts on that argument.
Right. So, as you're probably aware, there's a very vociferous debate going on within the public health community, and particularly among people who have worked in tobacco control for many years, about the potential benefits and harms of these products. The reality is that there are no well-conducted clinical trials that demonstrate that they're safe and efficacious for use. So essentially the FDA reneged on its responsibility to have these products properly tested, as any other drug would be tested before it would receive FDA approval. The harm reduction argument really hasn't been borne out for a couple of reasons. One of the main reasons is that the emerging scientific information shows that they are actually more harmful than was originally purported. The harm reduction argument was based on an unsupported premise, unsupported by science. That premise was that any nicotine delivery device that was not a combustible cigarette must automatically be safer than smoking a cigarette. But there actually hasn't been scientific evidence from the beginning to support that presumption. And what we see is now the weight of studies coming out showing higher risk for heart disease, for lung disease, for cancer. Now we're finding flavors that are actually carcinogenic in the products. We have products that have been on the market for many years to help people quit smoking, and California and San Francisco have been successful, more successful than just about any place in the United States, in helping people quit over time. And that's borne out by the studies of 30 years of declining smoking prevalence rates. I live in Marin County. I work with a community-based coalition in Marin County. We have some of the lowest smoking rates among adolescents in the country, below 5% for high school students. We now have, in the last 3 years, seen a rise in the use of electronic cigarette devices. Self-reported rates among 11th graders at high schools are in the range of 28 to 30% in just 3 years, from 0 to 28%. So for whatever benefit there might be for smokers who move off of cigarettes onto e-cigarettes, there's an enormous public health cost. The recent study that was just published shows that for every adult who uses e-cigarettes to get off of smoking cigarettes, there are 80 youth who not only take up e-cigarettes initially, but then go on to become cigarette smokers. So the cost to society dramatically outweighs whatever benefit there might be.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name is Patty Riddlepack. I'm a San Francisco resident and I work for the American Heart Association. I'm here today in support of the legislation to restrict the sale of non-FDA approved vaping devices. We have a vaping epidemic on our hands. For every one adult, like the doctor just shared, who may quit using e-cigarettes, 80 kids and youth become addicted to nicotine. I know firsthand the impact nicotine has on San Francisco's youth. Through our work with San Francisco Unified School District, I hear the stories about everyday struggles that students have to fight the peer pressure of vaping and how teachers have no idea students are vaping in their classrooms because these devices are discreet and sophisticated. Teen development stage is the perfect moment for a lifetime of nicotine addiction and leads to lifetime customers. Juul and Big Tobacco know this. Please support this important public health policy and protect San Francisco kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hello, thank you for allowing us to speak on this today. My name is Nick Brodnicki. I work on the Community Impact Team for the American Heart Association. I spend the lion's share of my time working in the San Francisco and Oakland Unified School Districts. I'm also a former teacher. So, simply put, my mission is to help youth live longer, healthier lives, make better decisions. The time I spend with youth in this city, or really anywhere, it shows me how impressionable they are. I know how impressionable I was. I'm sure you can remember how impressionable you were when you were in elementary, middle, and high school. Creating a ban on non-FDA approved devices will help remove a massive chunk of the impressions vaping companies with non-approved devices can make on youth, because none of them are approved right now. You know, in relation to this, I find it interesting how there is never really a push in the marketing of currently FDA-approved smoking cessation devices towards youth. We don't see those methods being widely used in schools. There aren't kids hitting up a patch in the bathroom. They're hitting up their Juul pods and their different vaping devices. And, you know, it's well documented that the drug nicotine, combined with a whole host of other chemicals, in this case, does not help anyone lead a longer, healthier life. So while San Francisco can't fix all of the issues at any given moment that it sees, the city can keep being a leader in progressive policy that benefits the public and works to improve the health of its citizens, specifically its youth. Please continue moving this forward. Thank you.
Carlos Solizar.
My name is Christine Chesson, and I'm a San Francisco mom of 3 in Supervisor Stephanie's district. I'm part of a grassroots movement of parents across the country working to halt the explosion of non-FDA approved e-cigarettes such as Juul that are creating a brand new generation of nicotine and tobacco users. My own son is now being treated for nicotine thanks to Juul's aggressive and predatory campaign to grow a brand new customer base for its addiction business. Kids in San Francisco have told us that up to 80% of their friend groups are regularly using e-cigarettes. It's normal. Everyone does it, they say. Big Tobacco has snuck back into the addiction business through the tech industry's side door, luring millions of teens and young adults down this profitable path. Juul Labs has refused to submit their e-cigarettes to the FDA for approval, where their toxic ingredients and predatory marketing plans would be reviewed for public health and safety. What are they hiding? Companies, including Juul, are now trying to buy influence with local organizations and clubs, including the California Democratic Party, using the millions of dollars they're making in the addiction business. How many young people are they addicting? A recent study just cited by UCSF found that for every 1 adult that makes the switch from smoking to e-cigarettes, 80 young people between the ages of 12 and 30 will start using tobacco daily through e-cigarettes who would not have otherwise started. 80 new addicts for every one who switched. This isn't just bad for my son, this is bad for an entire generation, and we should not be willing to pay this price. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Hello, my name is Vanessa, and I'm a former Galileo student and a current college student at Mills College. I've never smoked a cigarette in my life, but known people that have. When e-cigarettes were first announced, the whole idea of smoking an e-cigarette became a trend. Curious as to what these new e-cigarettes would be like, I took my first puff in high school. The e-cigarettes were surprisingly easy to obtain. A friend from a friend sold it to me. Until this day, I still have no idea where they first obtained the product. I had no idea how sweet and warm vapor followed by a little nicotine rush would be, especially when it comes without that awful stench of an ashtray. As weeks and months passed by, I noticed how addictive they have become. If someone had warned me how addictive e-cigarettes would be, I'd never have taken my first puff. E-cigarettes were supposed to be a healthier alternative to smoking. However, they have become a lifestyle choice and a gateway to real cigarettes. Many college students think of vaping as something fun to do with friends, not as a product with health risks. The prevalence of vaping has grown among peers, and people would go out of their way to share them and sell them. The social pressure of vaping isn't the only reason why teens are using e-cigarettes. It also has to do with how big tobacco companies market the product, which has created new addicts for their new customer base. Nicotine harms the developing brain of our youth. For example, the prefrontal cortex of the brain is very vulnerable to the nicotine effects. Nicotine unlocks special receptors molecules in the brain and causes these cells to release signaling molecules like dopamine that helps users to reach the special high. Underdeveloped brains can develop more of these receptors. As more receptors develop, the more nicotine people will need to reach that high. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Dharma Bhatta. I'm a postdoctoral researcher at UCSF. I would like to support ban e-cigarettes. E-cigarette increase the risk of heart attack, not decrease. So risk of the e-cigarette and combustible cigarette are similar for heart attack. So 1/3 of Americans are dying with heart disease, and e-cigarette and cigarette are a risk factor for heart disease. So the risk of e-cigarette and combustible cigarette are similar. That's why we cannot recommend the e-cigarette for harm reduction and cessation devices. So we just published scientific evidence 2 days before. The e-cigarette is significantly associated with heart attack among the adult Americans. So I want to submit this evidence for the record. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, supervisors. My name is Bob Gordon, and I'm co-chair of the San Francisco Tobacco-Free Coalition. Supervisors, how can we not be inspired by San Francisco icon Henny Kelly speaking out at last week's Democratic convention? Upon seeing Juul's huge commercial presence at the convention held here in town, she asked, "What committee should I go to ask this party to not take any money from Juul, who preys on children?" Please, supervisors, we know who Juul is. 35% owned by Altria, Philip Morris. It's big tobacco. It's estimated by the Journal of American Medical Association Pediatrics that just came out last week that nearly 90% of Juul's social media followers, 90% of Juul's social media followers are young people under the age of 21. Our middle schools, our high schools are awash with Juuls. Please, supervisors, parents, friends, neighbors, let's take this logical next step. Thank you.
Hello, supervisors. Carol Magruder, co-chair of the African American Tobacco Control Leadership Council, back again. We fully support this ordinance. First of all, I'm the co-chair, and we actively work all over the country to save the 45,000 black people who die every year in this country from tobacco-induced diseases and all of the sequelae that happen because of that. They are the #1 predator of our people. We want to applaud you, Supervisor Shaman, because you're taking strong leadership, and we know that Juul has really been working the whole country, trying to use our African American leaders and organizations as a buffer against the legislation that's coming down on them across the country because of their marketing to our children. When we talk about harm reduction, I was here in San Francisco when we fought for needle exchange. Needle exchange was not about sprinkling needles all over the city for anybody who might want to become an IV drug user, which was the example of what Juul is with our children. Needle exchange was about exchanging a needle for a person who was already an IV drug user. So it was a swap out. We weren't encouraging people to become IV drug users in our effort to combat AIDS in those days. So it's a totally different animal. It's hard for Juul to test anything with the FDA because what is the level that we're expecting? We know the product kills people and that it's addictive. So what's the measurement of what's the measurement of how that compares to combustible cigarettes? If Juul only kills 4 out of 10 and cigarettes kill 5 out of 10, does that mean we want them to just go wholesale in our communities and addict our children and another generation? So we support this measure. This is part of a broad package in the state of California. The California Department of Public Health is investing in our party populations. There's revenues coming down because of the tobacco tax, so nothing that we do is in isolation. This will be accompanied by more cessation services for people, more services to reduce stress and address the social determinants of health. So this is part of our...
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ted Guggenheim, and I'm a San Francisco resident living in District 5. I'm also a member of the San Francisco Tobacco-Free Coalition. In December 2018, Altria, the company that makes Marlboro cigarettes, purchased 35% of Juul. Juul is now unequivocally part of Big Tobacco, and for anyone who thinks that Big Tobacco has not infiltrated our schools, I present you this page from a Bay Area high school yearbook. It says, "Vaping, is it cool to Juul?" The first student replies, "I think it would be fine. I mean, how bad could it be?" And the second states, "I think everyone should do it every day. It's great, just the best. You could even say amazing." E-cigarette companies try to market themselves as a healthier alternative to cigarettes. This would be like Coca-Cola investing in Pop-Tarts and then telling you to purchase Pop-Tarts as a healthy sugar reduction product. Anything the city can do to work towards keeping these and all other addictive and deadly nicotine delivery devices out of the hands of young people is a step in the right direction. Juul is not cool. Let's keep it out of school. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Stella Maris, and I live in the Bayview district of San Francisco. I'm a member of Project Enough Group, and we're a group of young people that have an interest in controlling the online sales of online flavored tobacco within San Francisco and California in general. We conducted a research among high school students, and from the survey, we found that 50% of the students said they preferred flavored tobacco e-cigarettes to regular e-cigarettes. And most of us know that flavored tobacco is really addictive because it gives this appealing feeling and it suits the brain. And we know that all e-cigs contain nicotine, which is also very detrimental to the health, and it's also very addictive. And I don't think any of us would want our youths or our sisters or brothers to be addicted to any kind of product, especially those that are detrimental to the health. So I support the ban for the law. Thank you.
Good afternoon, supervisors. My name is Audrey Bedelia. I am a member of the San Francisco Tobacco-Free Coalition and proudly San Francisco born and bred. When I began my work providing tobacco use prevention education throughout the Bay Area, including here in this city, more than 4 years ago, I never would have predicted that I'd find myself at the front lines, standing in halls and classrooms of schools where thousands of youth I speak to have fallen casualty to the deceptive tactics used by the e-cigarette companies, such as Juul, to aggressively market their harmful products to children in hopes of addicting a new generation of tobacco users. The United States Surgeon General highlights the 900% increase in vape use in his recent advisory, saying that we have an epidemic at our hands. But it is much more than that. We are at war with companies who defend profit over the health of our most vulnerable populations, who propagandize and mislead the public about their intentions to help users quit tobacco, and who have yet to step foot in the trenches of our schools and homes and assess the real damage that they've caused. E-cigarettes continue to go unregulated. Companies use tactics to target youth and minorities that otherwise are illegal for tobacco companies. Millions more are getting hooked, and cities like San Francisco are paying over $300 million annually towards the economic cost of addiction. All the while, more and more research reveals the harmful health effects of these products. San Francisco has the opportunity to protect the youth of this community by supporting this ordinance and send this message to the e-cigarette companies. This city is done paying your reparations. It's time to wave your white flag and keep your products out of our city.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Randy Wong, and I work at Breathe, California. We conduct youth tobacco prevention education, and we also hold quit smoking groups for the general public, and in the past have also held quit smoking groups for teenagers. And I'd just like to share, as you weigh what to do today, a story about one middle school that I went to 2 years ago. It's in the southern part of the city, and a group of 8th graders were caught all vaping. Going to that school, I noticed that there were many shy folks, outspoken 8th graders, tall ones, small ones. And the one thing that they all had in common, I thought as I was talking to them, was that they are all 13 years old, and they have all just started vaping for the first time. That is something that I think must be considered today, and I wanted to share also that in the last 2 years, this really has intensified. This is the reality that we have seen on the ground, in the schools, and in youth centers where we go. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Tanner Wakefield, and I'm a tobacco control policy researcher at UCSF. In particular, I've focused on tobacco industry activity. So the tobacco industry for decades has made claims of economic harms in the face of regulation. This goes for things such as product sales, taxes, smoking restrictions, and generally it's always been unfounded in those claims of economic harm. Also, in terms of illicit trade and black market sales, those have also been practically unfounded. Indeed, the industry itself has engaged in smuggling. Juul has had the opportunity to submit for FDA approval for 3 years, but it didn't. So why should public health be punished for its negligence? These are not a harm reduction product. Far more youth are being ensnared by nicotine addiction than those switching from cigarettes. This proves the forbidden fruit theory to be a bunk. Kids have initiated e-cig use in droves because they feel it's safer, because it has an appearance of less risk. As a result, it's causing greater harm because more people are putting themselves at risk to nicotine addiction. Youth that become addicted will likely have their life and health plagued for years. My grandpa, while he used cigarettes when he was 14, continues to smoke to this day as an 89-year-old. And he's one of the lucky people that can claim to be 89. Do we think that 30% of parents are bad because their kids choose to use this product? And even if some of them are, should we abandon them to a lifelong addiction at the hands of predatory companies? So I urge you to support this ordinance. Thank you.